Let me ask you something strange. Have you ever watched an old dog sleep? Its chest rising slowly, eyes twitching, and wondered if, somewhere inside, it knows. Not knows it's tired. Not knows it's loved. But knows that one day it will end. That every breath is being counted. That nothing alive escapes the same quiet door. It's an uncomfortable question, isn't it? Because the moment you ask it, you realize how little we actually understand about what animals carry inside their minds. We assume they live in pure presence, free from the dread that haunts every human being from childhood onward. We tell ourselves they're lucky, that they don't know what's coming, that they don't fear the ending, that they simply exist until they don't. But the deeper scientists look into the lives of elephants, crows, chimpanzees, dolphins, and even dogs, the more that comfortable assumption begins to crack. Because the real question isn't whether animals fear death the way we do. The real question is whether they understand it at all, whether some of them grasp that life has an end, whether grief in the animal world is a glimpse of something far more profound than instinct. And that's what is realize, and strange feather more beautiful than most people expect. To get there, we have to start with a simple word that scientists treat with enormous care: awareness. There's a difference between reacting to death and understanding death, and that gap is where the whole mystery lives. A dog flinching at a loud noise is reacting. A crow standing motionless beside a dead friend, refusing to move for hours, may be doing something else entirely. Researchers call this concept the cognition of mortality. It's the ability to recognize that a living thing has stopped living, that the stillness is permanent, that the one who was here will not return. Humans developed this understanding around age 4, and for centuries we believed it belonged to us alone. Then we started watching elephants. In the savannas of Kenya, researchers have documented something that defies every easy explanation. When elephants come across the bones of another elephant, they stop. They go quiet. They touch the bones with the tips of their trunks. Slowly, gently, almost reverently. They do not do this for the bones of other animals. Only their own kind triggers the ritual, and it can last for an hour or more. They lift skulls, turn tusks over in the dirt, and sometimes return to the same spot year after year. One researcher described it as the closest thing to mourning she had ever seen outside of a human funeral. But elephants are only the beginning. In the forests of West Africa, primatologists have filmed chimpanzee mothers carrying the bodies of their dead infants for days, even weeks. They groom them. They protect them from flies. They refuse to put them down, even as the small body changes in ways that should repel any creature with a sense of smell. It isn't denial. It's something quieter, something that looks painfully familiar to anyone who has ever lost someone they loved. And then there are the crows. If you've ever seen a flock of crows gather around a fallen one, you've witnessed one of the strangest behaviors in the animal kingdom. They circle, they call out, they land nearby and watch in silence for long minutes before flying off together. Scientists call these gatherings crow funerals. The birds aren't paying respects in any human sense, but they are doing something deliberate. They are learning. They study the dead crow, the surroundings, the possible threat, and they remember. A crow that sees death in a place will avoid that place for months, which raises a haunting possibility. That crows may not mourn the way we do, but they understand that something terrible has happened, and they treat it as information worth carrying for the rest of their lives. Dolphins do something similar in the open ocean. Mothers have been observed pushing the bodies of their stillborn calves to the surface for days, refusing to let them sink. Whole pods will slow their travel to stay with a dying member. Marine biologists call these episodes of pymetic behavior, a clinical word for what looks unmistakably like compassion. And here's where it gets even stranger. In 2018, an orca named Tahlequah carried her dead newborn through the waters off the Pacific Northwest for 17 days, traveling more than 1,000 miles. She would not let the small body go. The world watched, heartbroken, and scientists struggle to call it anything other than grief. So is this grief the same as ours? That's the question that splits the entire field of animal cognition. Some researchers argue we're projecting human emotions onto animal behavior, a tendency called anthropomorphism. Others argue the opposite, that we have spent so long denying animal minds that we've blinded ourselves to what's right in front of us. The truth probably sits between the two. Animals may not sit awake at night wondering when their time will come. They likely don't picture their own funerals or imagine the world without them. But more and more evidence suggests that many social animals understand on some level that death is real, that it is final, and that the absence of leaves matters. Let me pause for a moment and ask you something. Have you ever had a pet who seemed to know when another pet in the house was dying? A dog that wouldn't leave the side of an older companion? A cat that became unusually gentle in someone's final days? I'd love to hear about it in the comments, because these small everyday observations often reveal more than any laboratory study. Now back to the deeper layer of the question. There is a concept in animal cognition called mortality salience, and it asks whether an animal can recognize that it, personally, will die. Not just that others die, not just that bodies stop moving, but that the same fate is waiting inside its own future. This is a much harder bar to clear. To grasp your own mortality, you need a sense of self that extends through time, a self that can imagine tomorrow, next year, and a tomorrow where you no longer exist. For decades, scientists believed only humans had this kind of forward-looking self-awareness. That belief is starting to soften. Great apes plan for the future, hiding tools they'll need the next day. Scrub jays remember where they buried specific foods and when those foods will spoil. Elephants seem to anticipate seasonal changes and lost family members across vast stretches of time. None of this proves they think about dying. But it suggests that the mental architecture required for such a thought may not be as exclusively human as we once believed. Somewhere in those long memories and careful plans, there may be a flicker of something we would recognize. Consider the case of older dogs. Veterinarians often describe a kind of stillness that settles over many dogs in their final weeks, a quietness that owners almost universally notice. They seek out solitude, they linger in favorite spots, they look at the people they love with what feels like a different kind of gaze. Is this awareness, or is it simply exhaustion? Honestly, no one can say for sure, but the consistency of the behavior across breeds, households, and cultures is striking enough that even skeptical researchers admit something is happening that we do not yet have the science to explain. And maybe that's the most honest answer. That the animal mind is not a smaller version of ours, but a different shape entirely, with its own corners we haven't learned to map. Death may not arrive in their thoughts as a concept, a date, or a fear of nothingness. It may arrive as a feeling, a shift, a quiet weight that something is changing and cannot be undone, which, when you think about it, may not be so far from how we experience it either. Strip away the language, the rituals, the prayers, and the philosophy, and what's left of human grief is something very simple. A presence that is gone, a silence where there used to be sound, a body that no longer answers. Animals seem to feel that silence too. They may not name it, may not theorize about it, may not write poems or build tombs, but many of them stop, look, touch, and remember. And in a world where remembering the dead is one of the most distinctly human things we do, that small recognition is enormous. It means we are not alone in noticing the dark. It means the awareness of loss, in some primitive but real form, has been threaded through the minds of many creatures who share this planet with us. The elephant returning to the bones, the crow circling in silence, the orca carrying her calf, the old dog choosing the quietest corner of the house. They are not us. But they are not nothing either, and they may understand more about endings than we have ever given them credit for. And maybe that is the truest gift of asking this question. It does not diminish us to discover that other minds touch the same shadow we do. It enlarges the world. It tells us that wonder and grief and tenderness are older than humanity, older than language, older than memory itself. When you look at an animal now, you might see it differently. Not as a creature locked in an eternal present, free from the weight we carry, but as a fellow traveler walking the same strange road, aware in its own way that the road eventually ends. If this story moved you even a little, please hit the like button. It genuinely helps the channel reach more curious minds. Subscribe if you'd like to keep exploring the hidden inner worlds of animals with us, because there are so many more questions waiting. And in the comments, tell me something simple. Has an animal in your life ever seemed to understand more than it should have? I read every reply, and your stories shape the videos we make next. In the next one, we're going somewhere even more surprising, into the question of whether animals dream the way we do, and what those dreams might be about. Until then, stay curious, stay gentle, and keep wondering.